right, today we are going to take a look at changing between rules, tables, and graphs. Make sure you have your notes right along with you to fill out as we are going. One of the other pieces that I want to make sure that you're doing is putting your name on that front page in case your notes get lost. And this is going to be a foldable, so you can actually make a little book out of it. So our first example we're going to look at is our one on the left. So we have, for babysitting, Asia charges a flat fee of $5 plus $7 per hour. We can represent the situation with a table and a graph using the equation y equals 7x plus 5. So in this particular situation, we want to look at what does x represent and what does y represent. So x here is going to represent our the number of hours that she babysits. And then the y is going to represent how much she is charging, or her fee. And I'm going to go ahead and just bring those labels over here as well into our table. And now we're just going to pick some values. I'm going to go ahead and pick 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In this case, thinking about negative values wouldn't actually be reasonable because you can't babysit for a negative number of hours. And then kind of just putting in those x's or substituting them into x or plugging them in to figure out what our fee would be. So for example, I would have 7 times 0 plus 5 for if she works 0 hours. So this would be $5 just for her coming over to your house. Then we'd have 7 times 1, which would be 7, plus 5. So if she babysits for 1 hour, she would make $12. 7 times 2 plus 5 would give us $19. 3 hours would be 21 plus her $5 fee, which would be $26. And then $28 for the 7 times 4 plus 5, which would give us $33. Now that we have all of those values, we're going to go ahead and take those values from the table and graph them. If you notice, our table is, or our coordinate plane is not labeled at all. So I'm going to go here, and our hours are our x value. And then our fee is our y value. And now I have to come up with a scale. In this case, because we're going by ones on our for our x values for our number of hours, I'm going to go ahead and keep with that. So we have 0 hours, 1, 2, 3. But then for our y values, it's not going to make sense to go count by ones because my values go so high. So I'm actually going to go ahead and count by 5s. And the nice thing is I can make my scale whatever I want as long as I keep it consistent. So I can't, for example, count by ones and then switch to 5s, or count by 5s and then switch to 10s. And now I'm just going to go ahead and plot those points. So if you remember from our first hour, Asya makes $5. So that would be the ordered pair 0, 5. And then for her first hour, she made $12, which is going to be a little bit more than 10. plot my point. For 2 hours, she made 19, so it's going to be just under 20. For 3 hours at 26. And then for 4 hours, we have 33. And then we can kind of see this line because it keeps increasing on the same pattern. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video, and I want to see if you can do the second example by yourself and then check based on what I do in the video. All right, so I want to join a yoga club this summer, and there's a $100 annual fee and a $5 fee for each class that I plan on attending. I want to represent the situation with an equation, table, and a graph. So our equation, if you're thinking through, is we're going to have our y is going to equal a $100 fee that I'm going to pay to just join, plus an additional $5 for each class that I take, so 5x. So here, our x represents the number of classes. And the y is going to represent my fee, or the cost. Okay, so once again here, I'm going to put in cost, and here I'm going to do number of classes. All right. Now I'm going to pick different numbers of classes. For me, again, I'm just going to count. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 classes. So if I join the Y or the yoga club and I end up not going into any classes, it's going to cost me $100. Okay? If I end up going to one class, it's going to cost me $105. 2 classes would be $110. 3 classes would be $115, and 4 classes would be $120. Now I'm going to use those values to go ahead and graph. So number of classes is going to be our x. The cost is going to be our y. Now, in this case, I'm not actually going to start at 1, nor am I going to count by even 100s, because there's such a small difference between our values when we look between our 0 and our 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called a break in the graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little kind of squiggly line there to show that I'm not starting at 0, so that I can get a better representation of my data. And then I'm actually going to start with 100, and I'm going to count by 5s. So this will be 105, 110, 115, 120, 125, 130, and so on. And by doing that, it's going to be easier for me to graph my data and also look at my data since it's so close together, without having to create a gigantic graph. Now I'm going to graph, so at 0 classes, it's going to cost me $100, 105, 110, 115, and 120. And once again, we find an increase as we keep going. So this is just one way that we can look and translate kind of from a situation to tables and graphs.